Welcome to Rosh Hashana before Rosh Hashana part 3. We are up to Masechta Rosh Hashana, Perek Aleph, the first chapter, Mishna Daled, the fourth Mishnah. Mishnah now continues to talk about the mitzvah of establishing a calendar and the system that they used when there was a Sanhedrin, that they would sanctify the day of Rosh Chodesh based on the testimony of the witnesses that would come and arrive and say that they had in fact spotted the beginning of the cycle of the new moon. This Mishnah deals with these witnesses that didn't necessarily live right in Yerushalayim. They might have been living a little bit far away. And it comes the night after the 29th day, and perhaps the moon is a little bit obscure, and yes, witnesses spot the moon. But it happens to be Shabbos. So for them to get to the Sanhedrin, for them to get to the court on time to say their testimony, that in fact they spotted the new cycle of the new moon, might require them to desecrate the Shabbos, to actually be Mechalel Shabbos. So the Mishnah tells us, now this particular Mishnah in the meantime is talking about when the system took place after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Mishnah says, Al Shnei Chadoshim Mechalelin Es HaShabbos. For 2 months, where the Rosh Chodesh was so critical and so important, those 2 months, if witnesses saw the moon, they are permitted to desecrate the Shabbos to get to the court in order to give their testimony. Al Nisan ve'al Tishrei, the month of Nisan and the month of Tishrei. Shebehen hashluchin yotzin l'Surya. These were critical months. These were months that had the Yontif, the Yom Tovim, Rosh Hashana, and Kippur Sukkos, and Pesach. And in fact, these are the months that they would send messengers to Syria, far away, to tell everyone when Rosh Chodesh was, because that's how important the months were. Ubohen mesaknin es hamoyados. It was based on these months that all the other festivals were based, and therefore the criticalness of these Rosh Chodesh made it permissible, as they derive from a pasuk, that it in fact is permissible to break Shabbos for this purpose, and it was designated that in these 2 months the witnesses could in fact break Shabbos to get to the court. However, says the Mishnah, when the Beis HaMikdash was around, Mechalelin Afal Kulon, for every Rosh Chodesh, they would be able to rush to the Beis HaMikdash, to rush to the court to say their testimony, because every Rosh Chodesh was important. It was important to get every Rosh Chodesh right, because Rosh Chodesh had a particular sacrifice that needed to be brought on that day, and therefore because of the importance of the sacrifice that was brought on Rosh Chodesh, they allowed witnesses for every Rosh Chodesh to break Shabbos, to get to the temple, to get to the Beis Din on time, to give their testimony. Let's continue with Mishnah Hay, the 5th Mishnah. Bein shem nira ba'alil, bein shaloi nira ba'alil, mechalelin olav es HaShabbos. The first opinion of this Mishnah says that when these witnesses saw the moon and they want to get to the court that might involve breaking Shabbos, it makes no difference if they saw the moon clearly in the middle of the sky, where in fact they could assume that they're not the only ones to see it. There's probably people right next to the court, right next to the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, or next to wherever the court is, that will not require them to break Shabbos. It doesn't matter. The importance of making sure that there's witnesses to come and testify for the new moon is so important that whether the moon was seen clearly in the sky or whether it wasn't, you can still break Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi says, Im nira ba'alil. No, if they saw the moon clearly in the middle of the sky, if that was the angle, then they can assume that someone else also saw it. They can assume that the court, the Sanhedrin, will be able to make the Rosh Chodesh without them, and therefore, ein mechalelin olav es HaShabbos. They may not desecrate the Shabbos for that purpose. Just want to mention that this mitzvah of making a calendar is a very powerful mitzvah. It symbolizes the power and the ownership of Torah that God gave the Jewish people. Let's take, for example, Rosh Hashana or Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the day that Hashem injects into the world as such a special holy energy. But when does Hashem do it? Hashem only does it after the Jewish people have established when the Yontif will take place. The Kedusha, the holiness that God gives into the world, only sets in when the Beis Din decides when the Yontif will be, or even nowadays, when the system that Hillel established designates and defines when that Yontif will take place. And that's why on Yontif, including Rosh Hashana Yom Kippur, when we end the bracha, we say, Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. That God sanctifies the Jewish people and the festivals. The Jewish people first, And it's through the sanctity of the Jewish people that the festivals are in fact sanctified. Ksiva v'chsima tova, a good year, and have a good